Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Highlights from the New York Times DealBook Summit. Andrew Ross Sorkin's sit-down interviews with Jeff Bezos, Fed Chair Jerome Powell, Prince Harry, even OpenAI CEO Sam Altman.
A moment that stood out was when I asked Altman about Elon Musk.
The world's biggest thinkers on the world's biggest issues, like former President Bill Clinton on the backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Diverse groups make better decisions than homogenous ones do.
And Bitcoin hits $100,000, finally.
I have read it.
You read the Bitcoin Standard?
Yes.
And that didn't help
Years
you?
ago. We've been talking about it for a decade now.
Plus, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise on efforts for unity in the new Congress.
Lowering energy costs, lowering food costs, securing America's border. All those things we deliver if we all vote together.
It's Thursday, December 5th, 2024. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue her, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And Andrew, welcome back. Well done.
Thank you. It was a crazy day yesterday, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about. But
tons and tons of news, that was broken. Lots of
news.
huge names you were talking to. I can't believe you're still standing.
I may not be. I'm drinking my coffee and enjoying it. Meantime, Bitcoin soaring now past $100,000. You can take a look at $102,000 right now. And just yesterday at the DealBook Summit, Fed Chair Powell said this about Bitcoin.
People use Bitcoin as a speculative asset, right? It's like gold. It's just like gold, only it's virtual. It's digital. People are not using it as a form of payment or as a store of value. It's highly volatile. It's not a competitor for the dollar. It's really a competitor for gold. You know, that's really how I think of it.
I'll tell you, though, that comment unto itself, I think, was a move, not really just for him, but for Washington. I mean, I don't think you've seen a lot of policymakers, except, I mean, I think this new administration obviously thinks of it maybe as gold, but we can talk about store of value, whatever that is. But the idea that, you know, if you talk to Janet Yellen in the old days, or
right.
you know, Ben Bernanke,
grudgingly
gave interviews about crypto. But
if you get people grudgingly to admit that it could
like be something like gold.
Well,
gold's only been the
dynamic.
Gold's only been the most basic store of value for 4,000 years.
But when you asked him, I think specifically, I was listening to it. I think you asked him specifically, is this like the dollar? And his point was, no, this is not a currency.
Right,
It's
not a currency.
dollar. People aren't using it to go out and buy things. But it is much more akin to gold.
Possible. It's infinitely divisible. It's seamless.
But why would you?
There's no
something
charge.
that's so volatile, why would you use it?
It might not always be that volatile.
No, but for now, like you wouldn't use it.
Well, nobody's used it. I've never used it.
You think the value is going to climb. You wouldn't use it to buy something.
No, but if it got to the point where, where it really did just match the valuation of fiat currencies, and then got to the point where it's where it is, where we won't even be alive when you get to 21 million. That's not till 2150.
Did you see Russia sounds like they're kind of advocating for it now, too, after being pretty anti-Bitcoin.
Well, it's very interesting. If the U.S. really moves towards it, I mean, one of the things I was trying to talk to Jay about yesterday, he didn't want to indulge me, really, was on the question of whether there should be a Bitcoin reserve, right? And what that would mean. And if you do start having, I mean, it was funny. It wasn't Venezuela. What was the country? El Salvador. Mm-hmm. When El Salvador first said that they wanted to have Bitcoin, there were a lot of people, by the way, including myself, so blame me, who sort of said,
they had an ATM machine.
Said, what's going on here? You know,
it worked out for
and it's worked out.
But no, back to gold. I mean, if you can go back and you can say that a suit, an ancient, whatever civilization you pick, whatever a suit cost back then was about an ounce of gold. It's to this day, or equated to oil. It's been probably the most consistent store of value and a way of representing work, or whatever you want to say gold has. So to be compared to gold, that's like the highest praise that you can
for the last 15 years. I will also say, and I don't know if we have sound of it, but Ken Griffin from Citadel has the opposite view.
Here's the problem. I own canvases covered with oil. Canvas probably costs $15. The oil paint probably costs $20. That's $35 sort of net cost. Some of these payments trade for tens of millions of dollars. Who am I to judge crypto? Of course, I wish I'd bought something that trades at 100 times the price it traded at a few years ago, right? We all have FOMO. Right. It's just universal. It's part of human psychology. Like, there's always, what do we miss out on, right? And then number two is, what I don't care for about crypto is what problem does it solve for our economy?
He doesn't understand Bitcoin, says...
Why doesn't he try to understand it?
He says it's just not for him. He said he'd prefer to buy art. I mean, literally, he just thinks about it a completely different way.
I'm still trying to convince people to read the Bitcoin Standard, because you don't even have to get that far into it to understand the nature of money, that it's really just there. It used to be shells on an island. If you did an hour of work and somebody else did an hour of some other work, you all keep a distributed ledger. You all keep the same ledger. You know what everyone else did, and that way it represents.
But it's a belief system.
No, it's not, Andrew. It's not.
You have to
math.
believe.
It's math.
No, but you have to believe in that. You have to believe in that ledger. I have read it. You have to believe.
And you didn't. You read the Bitcoin Standard?
Yes.
And that didn't help you.
Years ago. I feel like yes, we've been talking about it for a decade now.
So when you see that money has always been represented by these intangible
I think it's a
things.
Fascinating technology. I'm not telling you it's a terrible thing.
Well, why have you thought it isn't a store of value for so long?
Because it hasn't been. It's been a speculation. Because I think it is much more.
It's either been a store of $5,000 worth of value or a store of $102,000. It's always been a store of value. It just happens to fluctuate
a lot, and it
fluctuates a lot. And so do stocks.
But that's not what. When this first was developed and talked about, it was talked about as a currency.
You want to peg it at exactly, well, I know, but you're not going to peg it, and you can't even say the dollar's not volatile, because the dollar 20 years ago was worth twice as much as what it's worth today. So that's not a store of value either.
But why do you get mad at somebody like a Ken Griffin who's not?
Because I don't think he said he doesn't understand it. If you don't
just says it's not for him.
No, he understands it.
He does understand it.
I think he does understand it.
Oh, you told me he didn't understand
it. Well, I think he's saying he doesn't understand it,
right.
in the context of why.
I think there's a lot of people that have not done the work.
But that's what makes a market. I mean, to have people.
Fine, but what makes a market is it makes a market, but there's people that, I mean, I wish, now, because I believed in it, I could have, participated. Should have participated a lot. I could have participated a lot. You could have $10 million right now if you had just bought a little bit at $100 or at $1,000.
And there are a lot of people who did.
There are a lot of people who did.
Meantime, let's tell you about some other things.
I was a believer, and I didn't take advantage.
You weren't a believer back then.
No, I was a believer at 4,000.
I think you were a believer closer to like 6 or 7.
I bought some at 4.
Oh, you bought some at 4. Okay. When it came down.
Right. But my average cost was 8.
Right.
I'm an open book.
That is
Meantime,
impressive.
let's talk about some of the things that took place yesterday, because there were a couple of big themes at the DealBook Summit, including this. President-elect Donald Trump, as you might imagine, came up multiple times. Ken Griffin, Sundar Pichai, and Jeff Bezos were among the leaders that offered an optimistic view on the incoming administration and what it's going to mean for business and the economy.
America's open for business again. The endless amount of regulatory and litigation-induced paralysis from the Biden administration is over. It's over. So when I'm with a group of American executives, whether it's from telecommunications, it's from the consumer space, they are, whether they voted for Trump or for Harris, from a perspective of building their business, they are smiling from ear to ear, because they know they can now focus on creating value for customers, on creating jobs, on growing their business, and on prospering, rather than having to deal with just the endless onslaught of pointless litigation and pointless regulation.
In my conversations with him, he's definitely very focused on American competitiveness, particularly in technology, including AI. Look, I think there's a real opportunity in this moment. One of the constraints for AI could be the infrastructure we have in this country, including energy, the rate at which we can build things. I think there are real areas where I think he is thinking about and committed to making a difference.
I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him, because we do have too much regulation in this country. This country is so set up to grow. By the way, all of our problems, all of our economic problems, like if you look at the deficit, and I mean, the debt, the national debt, and how gigantic it is as a portion of GDP. These are real problems, and they're real long-term problems. And the way you get out of them is by outgrowing them.
There was an optimism, a sense, and the question, of course, is where we'll be in a year or two or
worrisome
three.
to me.
But interestingly, I remember talking to Ken and many of the others, even about tariffs and some of the things that we think of as sort of the great new uncertainties. Mm-hmm. And I think this issue of regulation, even more than anything else, is sort of the thing that's front and center. The idea that, the tariffs may or may not happen. They may or may not happen. When they happen, who knows? But the one thing you do know, if there is a certainty, oddly enough, it is the likelihood that the regulatory regime that we've been living under is going to shift or at least lessen. Now, what that looks like, I don't think we know yet.
I mean, there's something to the point that he's going to be president. You might as well embrace it. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well, I think that's the other part.
But then there's also the other thing is suddenly a lot of people do wake up to, oh my God, maybe Bidenomics was not so great with all the regulations and the economy did fine, but maybe we can do much better. And a lot of people that probably didn't vote for Trump, or it scares me. It reminds me of Davos from a couple of years ago, where a lot of the same people that were not supporters of President Trump. Suddenly over there, even in Europe, it was like, oh my God, here comes the savior of capitalism, and then the pandemic hit like 2 weeks later. In fact, I asked Trump in that interview about it. It was January 21st, and it was the same day that I think the World Health Organization admitted that there could be human-to-human transfer. And it was the same day, and there had been one person came to Washington State, and that was the first case. And it was all downhill from there. Now I hope no, I hope not. But whenever we get, and we're 22 times earnings too. So, but maybe we can grow, like Bezos says, maybe we can grow into 22 times earnings.
I think back to when we used to have Jack Welch on the program, and he talked so much about regulatory, like the overhang in Washington, how much trouble that caused for business along the way. He just talked about the idea if you could slice a lot of those things. So this has been kind of a quest for business for decades and decades. But now the reality of potentially having a president who's going to go
I also would just, but there also is the issue of, look, there's an idiosyncratic issue, which is, I think, each of those people that you just saw have business in front of the president, if you will. And I think that there's a very strong incentive. Can't beat him, join him. And at this
jealous
point,
of Tim Cook's relationship.
And to not want to be singled out.
I think at this moment in time, he's not the president yet, and you're hoping for the best. There is a honeymoon period, and we'll see. And I think there's a lot of hope. So,
it goes to all the executives who have made their way to Mar-a-Lago, like a Zuckerberg or other people along the line too.
But I think it would have been easier maybe even for us as a network to maybe cover more positively the possibilities of capitalism being unleashed and deregulation and lower taxes and all the things. I just think we're on the wrong side of the trade, and I'm glad that it's not easy. It's not easy to have been sort of hoping for this outcome and being challenged. See what I'm saying?
I think that everybody's got a different role in this, which is that I think that.
But I think it was a no-brainer. If you embrace business, you embrace capitalism. If you're pro-business and not anti-business, I just think that it would have been much better to.
I think for better or worse, the role of journalists is to be professional skeptics. Hopefully not cynics, but skeptics. That is the gig. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is the gig.
That gives you a lot of leeway to just be what we've seen in the mainstream media and legacy media. Be through this entire election process, Andrew. And I don't think they can be proud of a lot of it. I don't.
Let me continue with a little bit more from just yesterday. It was 2 years ago this week that OpenAI launched ChatGPT at the DealBook Summit. CEO Sam Altman talking about issues around safety, the company's relationship with Microsoft, and the future of AGI. But a moment that stood out was when I asked Altman about Elon Musk and the lawsuit that was filed against OpenAI and how he feels about all of this personally.
I grew up with Elon as like a mega hero. I thought what Elon was doing was absolutely incredible for the world. And I'm still, of course, I mean, I have different feelings about him now, but I'm still glad he exists. And not just because, no, I mean that genuinely. Not just because I think his companies are awesome, which I do think, but because I think he at a time when most of the world was not thinking very ambitiously, he pushed a lot of people, me included, to think much more ambitiously. And I'm grateful is the wrong kind of word, but I'm thankful. I'm positive about that.
Then asked Altman about Elon Musk's influence given his relationship with President-elect Trump.
I believe that pretty strongly, I mean, it may turn out to be wrong, but I believe pretty strongly that Elon will do the right thing and that Americans, it'd be profoundly un-American to use political power to the degree that Elon has it to hurt your competitors and advantage your own businesses. And I don't think people would tolerate that. I don't think Elon would do it.
Right.
It would go, again, lots of things not to like about him, but it would go so deeply against the values I believe he holds very dear to himself that I'm not that worried about it.
And that was just the beginning of all of this. We're going to show you a lot more of DealBook and so many different headlines have been made over the past
from that interview too.
Past day.
Just trying to figure out what he had to say about Elon, trying to figure out where he thinks there aren't these, this wall that
Right.
you're going to hit with different things along the way.
Which was interesting too, because he talked about how there isn't a wall. There's a big debate, obviously, in AI right now about scaling. He talked about how he said no wall. Later in the day, Sundar, he didn't say wall, but he said
limitation.
It gets a little harder.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to sort of see how these things play out. And the backlash on the topic of DEI was a big topic of conversation at the DealBook Summit. I want to show you Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai and former Bill Clinton talking about these topics.
Our employees have a strong voice in the company. I've always seen it as a source of strength for the company. So I don't see it as a power dynamic necessarily. I actually think it's resonating with a lot of employees too, right? I think, the employees are also looking for, they don't want always in a workplace,
right,
to be sorting out personal.
And so you just think it got so out of hand that it had its own backlash?
I think business imperative, people want to have impact through their work. I think, we can survey, we see people are the happiest when they feel they're being productive and the work is being impactful and they're doing well, right? That trumps other things, right? And so, so in some ways, maybe it's a set of factors coming together. Right. But I do feel it's not I don't see this as a imbalance between us and our employees. It doesn't feel that way.
The one thing I believe is that diverse groups make better decisions than homogenous ones. And I just think, and I think you could prove it, I think you could fill this very famous space with all the studies that have been done showing that diverse groups make better decisions than homogenous ones do. And that's what DEI is to me.
So it was very interesting. I thought, in a way, you saw two views there, right? You saw Sundar on one side, where they were very much in the DEI camp, and I think it was a bit of both the business imperative issue, which changed things, but also almost an internal backlash, meaning things went so far internally on some of these issues that I think there was actually a snapback among the people inside. It wasn't just a sort of a top-down situation. I think there was so much pressure, cross-current pressure. But what was so interesting to hear Bill Clinton say, former president, was he's spent the last decade more now with the Clinton Global Initiative, where he's been working with companies and pushing companies to pursue causes, oftentimes around ESG issues and DEI issues. And his view was not walk away from it. He was lean into it. Stop. Why is everybody? Because he thinks that sort of the wind's blowing one way, so everyone's going this way now, meaning the backlash is happening. And he said, if you're a believer, you're a believer. If you're not a believer, you're not a believer. But you shouldn't be going with the wind. That was the takeaway that I sort of took away from what he was saying.
You can be a believer in where we want to get, obviously. But if what you're doing to try to get there is actually counterproductive, you need to face that, and you need to realize that your own efforts are actually counterproductive to getting there to where you want
All
to
I
go.
could
And
think of
that's where
watching
we've,
that, yeah.
we've kind of gotten there.
All I could think of watching that was James Carville, who worked to get Bill Clinton elected,
Right.
and what he has had to say about some of these things. He
Right.
said the reason you're in this position is
Yeah.
because of what you've done with these.
There's the goal, but
Focus
then,
on the economy. It's the economy, stupid, was his famous tagline that
Yep.
Clinton picked up and was so successful with.
Right. We all want to get there. It's just you don't want to do things that turn people off so much that you end up further away from the goal than where you started. And that definitely has happened, I think.
Social media, of course, has come under increasing scrutiny for issues of safety and the impact on mental health. It was a topic that we talked about yesterday with Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. He's been focused on it in his recent work. In some cases, he's been a victim of it. And this is what he said about it at the DealBook Summit yesterday.
Shareholders are the ones that really are in control, and I'm sure their parents, and I'm sure hopefully they would agree that that kids need to be kept safe. But again, one of the things that's I guess has always puzzled me is that we live in an age now, or we have done, and this goes back to the tabloid era, specifically with the conversation that we were having about tabloids that you guys all heard, that we have elements of the mainstream media, legacy media elements,
right.
not all elements, trying to redefine public interest for their own personal interest. And at the same time, we have social media companies trying to redefine free speech for their own personal interests. And what shocks me, or what fascinates me, is the fact that that's not a conflict of interest, because it's so clearly, you know, the loudest voices
right.
are the people who are really deeply bought into making sure that things move the way that they want them to move.
We probably don't have enough time to talk enough about this, but this was fascinating because on one side, this goes to the whole information, disinformation, free speech issue,
right.
censoring, non-censoring.
You said there's no good guys.
And so what is the right answer?
Right,
because there's so many people who want to protect, you want to protect people
Legacy media wants
from,
to protect them. And
right, from, and what is misinformation or disinformation? Because, and it goes back, we were talking about Mark Zuckerberg, which is, you know, he thought he was doing the right thing during COVID, for example,
right.
in downranking through the algorithm certain types of information around COVID, has now come back out and said, and so there's part of the public, and maybe, and we were talking about it, maybe this election actually might have suggested something. Part of the public is saying, don't censor anything. I want all of it, and I'm smart enough to figure it out myself. And then there's another part of the population that's clearly saying, actually, no, I only want you to show me the stuff that's actually real, but then the question is what's real?
What's real, right.
Right.
And he has the experience, having lived through some horrible things that have been said about him and his family along the way.
Right. I don't know how, you know, if you have zero tolerance for that, you're going to have to move to Nirvana or to some type of idyllic place, because it's never going to be perfect.
Well,
the best.
He's moved to America, so hopefully
I think there's a good. I think community note. I think I want to see most everything, and then I want to make my own decisions. The UK is moving down a slippery slope. You've seen what is getting jail time over there. I mean, saying things that. Some of the things you were just talking about, that if you had said something about COVID, or if you had said something, you're doing time perhaps over in the UK, or that's why you got to pick your poison. You want to see everything, including what's totally made up, or do you just want to see what people want you to see and go to jail if you say something otherwise?
That's the big question.
Right.
I don't know what the right answer is. And then you have kids.
Got to be in the middle.
And then you have kids about
Right.
what they're supposed to see. We got into a whole thing about what happens in Australia. You know, under 16 years old, they're saying you can't, no social media.
Right.
What's the right answer?
My kids are telling me stuff that
Your kids aren't under 16.
no, but they act like they are, and I act like I am. So I mean, age has nothing to do with it.
Tease will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, the DOGE, how House Majority Leader Steve Scalise views the new Department of Government Efficiency as pitched by the incoming Trump administration.
We're going to be working hand in hand, and we want to share a lot of those ideas, the things that we've uncovered along the way. We also want to make sure that as they're identifying things, they're getting those to us quickly so that we can put some of those items into law.
This is Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. We got a lot going on.
Our next guest joins us to talk about the government funding deadline later this month, President-elect Trump's latest picks for his administration, and the new Department of Government Efficiency. Let's welcome House Majority Leader Steve Scalise from Louisiana. It's good to have you on, Leader Scalise. Thank you.
Good morning. Good to be back with you.
I want to get your reaction to something that was actually said yesterday. Vivek Ramaswamy was at our CNBC CFO Council Summit, and here he is talking about potential cuts to government spending, and then we'll get you to weigh in.
Is there any one thing that President Trump has told you, I want you to go cut that?
You know, I think he actually is looking at it the other way in terms of keeping a very open mind, top down, to say that let's start with a clean slate. Let's start fresh, and everything is in scope for what counts as government efficiency. It's not one part of the federal government or the other. It's actually looking at it as a whole. Are we respecting the taxpayer dollar? In some ways, to use an analogy to those in this room, in the way that a CFO would look at their shareholder capital.
Leader Scalise, I mean, we've got deregulation and possibly, streamlining government. How much can actually be done? Are you optimistic that we can make a difference, or that DOGE can make a difference?
Yes, I'm very optimistic. And in fact, one of the things we're going to be talking about with Elon and Vivek today, a lot of our members have ideas, have been working on various committees on things to do just that, to cut government waste, to identify and root out a lot of inefficiencies in government. And we're going to be working hand in hand. And, we want to share a lot of those ideas, the things that we've uncovered along the way. We also want to make sure that as they're identifying things, they're getting those to us quickly so that we can put some of those items into law, because there will be some things President Trump can do on his own through executive order. There will be some other things that we're probably going to need Congress to pass through, let's say, budget reconciliation, which is a bill we're working on already for January with President Trump's transition team. So that conversation's been going on for months. But, this addition with DOGE, I think so many people are very encouraged by the idea. Look, it's a refreshing idea that we're going to actually make government work better and make your taxpayers go further. There are probably 75% of federal employees here in Washington that still are not showing up to work under the excuse of COVID. COVID's been over for years, and yet you might wait right now months and months to get a passport renewed. Some people are waiting years to get a tax return processed from 3 years ago because those employees aren't showing up for work. So it's hurting families all across this country. Those are the kind of inefficiencies we're going to be looking at all across the board.
How much can be done without actual legislation? And the reason I ask is you just noted that there may need to be some legislation. What's the House going to look like at this point? I've seen, with some of the appointments and some people leaving and some close results that we still don't have yet, if you can believe that. But do you expect the overall environment to be any easier for anybody to get anything done if you only have a 1 vote or 2 vote margin in the House?
Right. We're going to settle in probably at 221 Republicans in the House. We have the majority, whether it's a 2-seat, some months because of people that are going to be pulled out of the House into the administration. It'll narrow down probably for a few months to about a 1-seat majority. And we're already working on recognizing that. By the way, earlier this year, we were at a 1-seat majority, and we still took care of our business back then. So this isn't new for Speaker Johnson, myself, the rest of our leadership team. It makes it challenging, make no mistake. I mean, we'd all take a 20-seat majority, but that's just not realistic. I wish states like California would learn how to count like every other state, where you can get the results of the election on election night, not 3 weeks later they're still counting. But at the same time, whatever the final number is going to be, Republicans will have the majority in the House and Senate. President Trump will be in the White House. And we're already working with President Trump. I was on a call with Senator Thune, the new majority leader coming in. We're all working in sync to make sure we deliver for the American people.
Well, you remember it was, I just thought it was a raucous caucus the last 2 years. And you remember the freedom.
That's a fair term.
Yeah, you remember the freedom side of things. They could be different now with Trump. Couldn't they? Can he turn the screws on some of those guys? I wasn't sure what the hell they were trying to accomplish. Other times I knew exactly what they wanted to accomplish, but Will they be as outspoken? And was it difficult to satisfy all their concerns? And we do have budget talks coming up again. Will that not be the case with President Trump at the head of the party?
Yeah. Look, we're already having some of those meetings now for what's going to happen in January. We're not going to wait until then to start working through what we know are going to be real challenges. But we're listening not just to Freedom Caucus members. We have on the other side of the spectrum, we have members in those swing districts, the 50-50 districts, that have different views on some of these issues. We're hearing all of them right now, listening to them. But we're also making it clear to everybody, let's say when we're at a one-seat majority for a few months in February, March, April, we're all in this together or it doesn't happen. And we talked about very specific things that we will deliver on for the American people, like lowering energy costs, lowering food costs, securing America's border. All those things we deliver if we all vote together. If three people think they've got a better idea and they're just going to vote their own way, then it won't happen. And so I think everybody realizes, okay, look, now's the time to put your ideas on the table if you have a different approach. But at the end of the day, we're going to all come together. And President Trump is the leader of our party, and President Trump has a very clear plan. He ran on very specific things, and frankly, most of us ran on those exact same things in our districts. So all across the country, I think you're going to see, the mandate that was carried out by voters on November 5th is going to be carried out by this new Congress starting in January. We're going to hit the ground running.
Leader Scalise, I guess it's what we do. We've been interviewing for House Financial Services Chairman. We've had Andy Barr on. We've had French Hill. And I can't believe we get down in the weeds to that extent. But we do. Who should we be hoping for? Who do you want? How's that? It is an important post, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, look, Andy's in the mix. French, as well as Bill Huizenga and Frank Lucas. So, you've got four great members that are on the committee today that are running for the chairman with Patrick McHenry retiring. The good news is we've got great choices. We're going to make that pick hopefully next week. The steering committee is going to be meeting next week, and that'll be one of the first ones we take up. Energy and Commerce is one of the other big committees that has an opening. And these openings don't come around often, although at least on our side, on the Republican side, we have 6-year term limits for chairman. On the Democrat side, you might serve 20 years. And so, the younger members see no path to becoming a chairman. Here you've got some real vibrant, energetic members that now have a chance to get the gavel on a real important committee like Financial Services.
The other nominations that we've seen are picks from President-elect Trump for the cabinet. Are there going to be some that don't make it all the way through? We don't have to get specific, but do you think everybody that is now up for a position is going to be successful?
I hope so. I mean, look, we've seen a couple of people drop out already, but, if you look at the people that President Trump has picked, some of them are more traditional, people that have the kind of background you would expect. But then some people are folks that President Trump is pulling out of different walks of life, and that's what's made him so successful in business. President Trump, remember, came here in 2017 as a businessman, was not in government at all, and he brought a lot of different people that helped us get things done, get the economy moving again, that understood the economy surely better than some of the kind of typical Washington people. So, when he makes some of those picks, I think you see some of the people that have been around Washington for 30 years kind of scratch their head and go, oh, gee whiz, that's not somebody who I see walking around the halls of Congress every day. That doesn't mean they're not going to make really good cabinet secretaries. And so what everybody should do is just hear them out. And that's what they're doing right now. They're going around meeting with senators. All of these picks are meeting with senators and having one-on-one conversations so that the questions, ask the tough questions, share the vision, and recognize that, you've got a lot of different people from very different walks of life that are going to add to this Trump administration. But the ultimate goal is to get the country back on track, to get the economy moving again, to lower inflation and lower costs for families and secure the border. That's our focus. It's everybody's focus.
And just quickly, a year from now, will you be saying, well, and Speaker Johnson says this, Speaker Johnson says that? That's going to be the case with your prediction?
Yes, I'll surely make that prediction. And Speaker Johnson's been a very effective leader and has the respect of our members. He listens a lot, which is an important trait for a leader. And with our conference, especially all the different factions, to keep us together on really big critical things. For all and you mentioned it earlier, we had our challenges, but we also delivered very big things. HR 1, a great energy bill. HR 2, a great border security bill. HR 5, a great bill for parents' Bill of Rights. We're going to keep delivering for the American people. We'll have our differences. The Democrats do too. But we come together and deliver for the American people. And now with the unified government in January, we're going to get this country back on track.
The Democrats don't have any. They're like the Borg collective. They're always solid. Sometimes I think you should be envious of what. What
they just got defeated because they were solid in the wrong direction.
Have you heard Raucous Caucus before? Did I come up with that? Have you heard that before?
We ought to go by the website quick before somebody scoops it up.
Yeah, it's like new normal.
We'll make T-shirts.
Raucous Caucus. All right. Thank you, Leader Scalise.
All right, thank you for listening to Squawk Pod today. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern. And to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears, follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.